All right, guys. So we're gonna be going over a little debate that went on against a fellow YouTuber and Twitch streamer, Fabian Liberty. And shout out to Fabian Liberty for allowing me to use this for some content from his Twitch stream. If you guys don't know who Fabian Liberty is, he's a libertarian commentator. He speaks about liberty. He speaks about the free market and a bunch of other things when it pertains to politics and when it pertains to like certain some politicians or even some LGBT stuff, school free housing and all that stuff. So if you guys want to check out his Twitch stream, check him out at Fabian Liberty. He also has a YouTube channel on here as well that's also called Fabian Liberty. So shout out to Fabian Liberty, and I advise everybody go check him out. So in this debate, we're gonna check out a bunch of things that this Marxist and this guy on the left side, he's the one who's a self-proclaimed Marxist, and the guy on the right, that's Fabian Liberty. We're gonna be looking at this debate and how the guy on the left was severely wrong about capitalism, socialism, communism, and pretty much his definition on coercion. Because this guy uses coercion in a way that nobody else uses it, especially when it comes to your everyday life, just trying to pay your bills, just trying to feed your family. He uses it in a way that nobody else defines it. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
To do with prices, and that is the essence of the labor theory of value. I just found his critiques to be irrelevant and not substantive.
I was like, I saw that and I was like, yeah, this guy seems like we could have a debate or a conversation about this. So you take umbrage with the fact that I am staunchly capitalist, that I am essentially the most capitalist the capitalist can possibly be by being an anarcho-capitalist, and so I want to hear why you think I'm wrong, because there's no moderator, right? So this is obviously going to be a little bit more free form. But
Okay. So during this debate, this guy on the left who goes by Hacker in the Discord, but his YouTube name is Free. Yeah, Free. Free. So his take is that capitalism is a bad philosophy that nobody should be using, and capitalism has never really helped out anybody. It was more socialism or more communism that actually helped people out to begin with. But living in the United States, we can see how capitalism actually helped out a lot more people than socialism or communism ever did. Because if you actually look at a lot of places that are still socialism, that still put socialism and capitalism, like the Middle East, Venezuela, China, Russia, amongst some other Eastern countries, you can see how communism mainly benefits the elites, and it does not actually help out the people who are at the bottom. It does not help them reach to the top. So we're gonna hear this guy out, and again, Fabian Liberty, that's the guy on the right. He's gonna give his take, and then I'm gonna give my take. So let's go ahead and continue with this.
I want to hear what it is that you think is wrong about my position, and if you can sprinkle in there how you're not a communist throughout this, then maybe we can figure something out, because I don't see the difference. but yeah, like give me your argument.
Well, do you want me to touch first on why I believe?
I want you to make the strongest argument possible.
Why my system is better. Why I think my system is better.
Well, you're coming to me with the proposition, right? Yeah. So if you want to get into like a comparison of systems at a later point, that's fine. But the first thing is you're saying capitalism is coercive, right? And so what I want from you is that argument. And obviously in that argument, I want to understand what your definitions are for capitalism and what your definition is for coercion, so that we can pick apart whether or not I agree or disagree with your position. And also, if I disagree, like tell you why I think you're wrong.
Yeah, so I believe to be capitalism, to be an economic system involving, obviously, capital investment and private ownership of the means of production, wage labor, and generally the profit motive. We can, really get into the nitty-gritty of this, but in essence, it's ownership of the means of production to reproduce profits every quarter. Maybe it's in the form of a dividend or a buyback, whatever that firm uses. I believe the CCP to be state capitalist, but I don't believe them to be socialist, as I truly think the delineation between socialism and capitalism is when the workers are making all private property subservient to their interests.
Okay, so what he just said here, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, he basically just gave a point where it's not as bad as people see. It's just some people who don't live in these countries. They give them their forte. But if you actually look at some news outlets from the Chinese the Chinese news, they would tell you full-fledged how it is when it comes to the government enforcement, how they handled the pandemic over there, and how people were being they was literally being forced to be put in hospitals to be experimented on. And this guy made the claim that the CCP is not really that bad of a take like everybody says it is, which is dead wrong. And this guy, you can literally see in this video that this guy has literally no idea what he's talking about. So let's keep on going.
And providing for their needs. In terms of coercion, in pretty much every circumstance, find that as an extenuating factor that would otherwise make a choice free. Obviously, that can apply to many things, and I'll explain how I do believe some coercion is justified to some extent. So where would you like to go with this?
So, I don't like your definition of capitalism, right? Because your definition of capitalism, I think, lacks any utility. Because the only system, so under your definition of capitalism, basically every communist regime would be capitalist. Every liberal democracy would be capitalist. The only places that wouldn't be capitalist, right, would be anarchists, some small relative anarchist communes, and extreme control of the entire market economy, such as North Korea. Even under your definition, Stalinism would be a form of capitalism, other than the name of saying the private property doesn't exist.
Yeah, which is completely not true, because we all know how ruthless Stalin was, and if he did not get his way, or if people went against what he was trying to do, Stalin would just off people or either put them in concentration camps. And this is the main things that a lot of people, especially nowadays, who claim that live in this country as we live in, with the free society that we in, without having his regulations and all that stuff. He's the whole Stalin bit. It's just the thing Stalin did, and his way of coercion was not that bad. When this guy literally killed tens of millions of people because they didn't do as they please. But let's hear his response.
Because I really don't feel any society has truly represented the interests of the workers. Social capitalist, even liberal societies, this is mostly because they use nomenclatura systems, and it's just a new way. Well, speaking to Eastern Bloc communism specifically, it's just a new way, I believe, for ruling classes to disguise their interests.
Okay, but again, that doesn't address the issue with you saying that capitalism is essentially a market economy that isn't 100% state controlled, right? That you make no delineation between fascism, the CCP, America, Iceland, etc. If all of these things are capitalist, right? Yes. And that's your definition of capitalism, then I would say more often than not, by your definition of capitalism, capitalism is coercive, because you just included throughout history, right? Like essentially every market economy since the Industrial Revolution with relatively few exceptions. And what this does is this frames the conversation, right? Where we get into an empiricist debate, which I don't want to do because I think empiricism I'm an Austrian, right? So I'm going to think it's stupid anyways. But we'll get into it in an empiricist debate. You'll bring up this, and then I'll be like, here's why that's not capitalism. Here's why that's not capitalism. Here's why that's not capitalism. And then eventually we get to some example that you have knowledge of that I don't have knowledge of. And then you're like, look, I got the dunk on him here. When really what it is, the problem is that you have a poor definition. At least in my approximation. So let me give you my definition of capitalism, right? And see if that like shores up something, or if we can come somewhere in between. So what I would say is that capitalism is the ownership of private goods, the ownership of which is determined by homesteading and voluntary transactions, where the distribution of commodities, price, and production, so in production I would include labor, land, and time, right, as elements of production, are determined by a competitive free market. Now, that to me is capitalism, right? Everything other than that to me is some state intervention that is capitalistic, right? It's close to capitalism. It has some tendencies of capitalism, but is not actually capitalism because it's a mixed economy.
Okay, yeah. So there are a lot of individuals out there who claim that the socialists, especially some who are in politics right now, that claim, like the AOCs, the freaking Ilhan Omars, the freaking basically the squad in general, the Nina Turners, that claim that capitalism has never worked for anybody, but it actually did. Capitalism actually helped a lot of people and get out of disenfranchised communities, especially when it pertains to the music industry and the entertainment industry. Capitalism ended up helping those guys get out of poverty. So when people say that capitalism does not help out anybody, especially when it comes to disenfranchised communities or black communities, they're basically telling a bold-faced lie that this way of trying to do things did not help out anybody, but it did. It was socialistic ideologies that did not help some other people get out of that situation, because they don't like it when a lot of people who are in these disenfranchised communities become part of the 1% or even part of the 10%. They don't want that. So let's go ahead and hear his response right here. And that was my take. Yeah, let's go ahead and hear his response.
Go as far to say not every transaction is voluntary. As a matter of fact, I think you could make the argument all transactions aren't voluntary. For instance,
what? Yeah. Okay, so again, what is he talking about? He said, okay, so this guy is basically giving the take that everything that happens is an act of coercion, or is an act of involuntary manners. When it comes to taxation, yes, that is an act of coercion, and that's an act of involuntary actions, because if you don't pay your taxes because maybe you're going through some financial troubles, you ain't got the money right now, you're more worried about putting food on the table for your family or yourself, and you got to worry about an inflation, you got to worry about an inflation and recession you're going through, prices going up, the dollar menus at some fast food chains are not $1 no more, not at $2 or even $3, and instead of actually accepting that fact, he rather just go past it and be like, yeah, everything that happens in life is an act of coercion, and he has nothing to back that up. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and look. You can just see Fabian Liberty has the same expression as I did. So we gonna hear him out. Let's just hear this.
This is especially, yes, this is especially patented, not patented, that's a different process, in circumstances which involve labor. Obviously, you're not going to just rot here and starve. You've actually got to go out somewhere into the world and work, or work.
Yeah, that's the human condition of the human species.
But is
right?
it not coercive?
Okay, if that's coercive, everything is coercive. Nature is coercive. Humans are coercive. All economic systems are going to be inherently coercive. If your definition of coercion is that there's scarcity, right, in resources, and that we don't live in a post-scarcity world, then everything is coercive, and your definition is meaningless.
I think coercion is justified to adequately accommodate for human need.
So
Okay.
Well, then define.
okay, so this guy just said corrosion is a legitimate thing. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get back to this fact. So when it came to a lot of communists and socialists throughout the years who killed millions of people for not following their way, was that act of corrosion a good thing? And I'm gonna end up tagging this guy as well, so he can answer that question from the dictators throughout history, the warmongers throughout history, the overlords throughout history. Does he see them, that at the corrosion, as a good thing? I'm gonna go ahead and wait for that response.
Coercion.
Well, as I stated previously, an extenuating factor that makes it to where choice would be free otherwise. I mean,
so you would say that.
Okay, so it's quite obvious this guy does not know what corrosion means. Corrosion is an act of force, is an act of violence. That's what it means. It's an act of force. This guy just used corrosion in a way that nobody else uses it. So what in the hell is he talking about? But let's keep on. Let's continue with this.
A tsunami is coercion. A hurricane is coercion. It's an extenuating factor that takes away individuals' ability to be free because they have to flee their home because a hurricane's coming, right? So you're saying that nature, like rain, fire, lightning, earthquakes is a form of coercion, and that the earthquake is actually anti-liberty. Like, you see how your definition doesn't make any fucking sense?
No. Anti-liberty, that is a process of nature. Well, I mean, humans are a form of nature. Like, everything is natural. And that's another reason why I'm opposed to fossil fuels, like fracking and all this. Because it...
Yeah, but all that's irrelevant. All of that's irrelevant to the question I asked, which is that, like, if your definition of coercion is one such as we live in a world with scarce resources, and there are environmental pressures, be they from nature, be they from other humans, etc., and that any environmental pressure that causes a human to act differently is a form of coercion, then the word coercion is just a word that describes the human condition and is meaningless to say capitalism is bad because it's coercive, because what you're saying is capitalism is the natural state of human beings. And I would say that that is a naturalistic fallacy in favor of capitalism, and you're actually arguing for capitalism by the definition of your own word. So are you pro-capitalist?
No. I think coercion can apply to virtually everything. But
like what?
A socialist.
Okay, like you saying coercion can come from an act of everything. Like what? Like so give it a legitimate example. Like or give a study where capitalism was an act of coercion instead of people coming in voluntarily in order to build revenue and gain money or try to build some generational wealth. Give some examples where that was a bad thing or it didn't work. And this guy obviously never gave no example during this hour and a half debate, which I'm not going to play the full hour and a half.
Communist system specifically entails is allocation of commodities based on human need, and even more left-wing of this system, including mine, have subsistence labor abolished. I mean, you believe in the non-aggression principle, right? Well, okay, I think here's a much better line of inquiry. Like, obviously, I agree with you in that coercion can apply to a multitude of various circumstances.
No. I'm talking about your definition.
That's not what he said though.
I think coercion. Requires personhood and will. I think in order to coerce someone, right? That when you use the word colloquially as coercion, you cannot be talking about natural phenomena or environmental pressures, right? What you have to be talking about is aggression towards another individual, that you're attempting to modify their behavior.
Again, this guy that has no idea what coercion means. It's an act of force. This guy's saying like capitalistic ideals was an act of force, which it wasn't. It was always voluntary. So if you choose to get a job somewhere, maybe at a warehouse, maybe at a McDonald's, that was an act of a voluntary asset. It wasn't by coercion, and it wasn't by force. Nobody put a gun to these people's head and said like, "Yo, you got to work here. If you don't work here, I'm gonna shoot you in your head." That's not. I've never seen situations like that, especially when it comes to like fast food joints, because nobody chooses to work at a fast food joint. They just applied that because they need money. That's not an act of coercion. That's an act of trying to live in everyday life and trying to pay your bills. But this guy obviously doesn't see it that way. But let's keep on going.
Right,
we do drastically affect the environment with what we do, and two, personhood is involved.
That's irrelevant. That's not an argument against what I said though. Like what I'm saying is that I think coercion requires personhood, and that personhood enacts its will to aggress upon another person via threats to attempt to change their behavior, essentially making the transaction non-voluntary. No, I'm not. Explain to me how I'm describing labor.
Okay. Yes. You are aggressing upon a person. Well, not aggress, but it's coercion because it's an extenuating factor that does not make the choice voluntary. I mean,
no, now you're going back to your definition that we already realized has no utility. Like, so if I'm describing something and I'm prefacing it with my definition, then what you're doing is you're straw manning me by supplanting your own definition again as part of your argument. So make the argument from my definition as to why I'm describing labor.
Again, he's using coercion in a way that nobody else describes it as.
Hinging upon apathy. I do believe it's some form of aggression to just let people starve. Let me ask you this simple question.
How's that?
Do you believe apathy is immoral?
I mean, it depends upon the circumstance, what you mean by that, but from a libertarian natural law perspective, there's nothing illegal about apathy. How is apathy or inaction, also as the Catholics would define passive action, right, a form of aggression? Explain to me how an individual, right? Because what you're saying is an individual must act. If they do not act, this is a form of aggression against another person. But see, the problem is where does the must act come from? The must act means that there is an impetus, either some enforcement mechanism, right, of some sort, where an individual attempts to coerce that individual into the supposed responsibility of action.
Okay, so before we keep on going to this, here's a lot of things that apparently a lot of people think that anarcho-capitalists they want anarchy. The definition of anarcho-capitalism is not a form of anarchy. It's a form of dismantling the big corporate entities that damages the smaller guys. But here's the actual definition of anarcho-capitalist from right here on Fabian Liberty. It is a political philosophy and economic theory that advocates the elimination of the state in favor of a system of private property enforced by private agencies, free markets, and the right libertarian interpretation of self-ownership, which extends the concept to include control of private property as a part of the self. So what this guy on the left is advocating for is statehood, which a lot of people like myself are hardly against, because the state is not actually here to help. They're actually here to damage us. Because before the state got involved with a lot of things, even during slavery times, which it was bad, because that was at the corrosion, because you had people from people who were forced into labor. And if they didn't do the labor, they would get hung, they would get whipped, they would get stuff like that. His definition of corrosion, he's trying to use that as a form of capitalism, and that was not what's going on during that time. It was because slavery is not a form of capitalism. That was a form of enforcement. But just want to add it in there. So let's keep on going.
So your definition of morality requires a violation first of the non-aggression principle, and I would say it just falls flat on its face there. Inaction and passive action are not forms of aggression.
I don't think the non-aggression principle adequately describes what you need to do to be.
Well, then you don't get to change the definition of something to say that something is a violation of a definition that you then change. Like, that's just subverting the definition to meet your own argument, which is just simply not how that works, right? Like, you're gonna have to stick with you can't use a word and then as you're trying to explain why I'm wrong about the word, change the definition of the word from your kind of Marxian lens, right? Like, that's not how that works. I'm gonna nail you to the wall to stick to your definitions. But you can make an argument, if you would like, about like why you think passive action or inaction or the feeling that an individual has in their mind is as apathy, not caring for the plight or suffering of others, is in effect aggression, which is force and violence or threats of force and violence against other person to stop their freedom.
Because it's making them beholden to your will. So say
how though? That's not a form of corrosion though. Just because you got bills to pay, you gotta go on about your day trying to live a normal life. Like, again, this kind of stuff happened before capitalism even came into the picture. When people was living through the medieval times, capitalism was nowhere in the picture. It was more about, okay, so I gotta do this. I probably got a farm. I gotta work. I gotta do this in order to put food on the table. I gotta build my own business, probably a lounge or a bar. Yeah, a lounge or a bar. I gotta do this in order to feed my family. All this happened before capitalism even came into the picture. Yeah, before capitalism even came into the picture, but this guy on the left, he obviously does not see it that way. Oh, I don't even think he even knows about this, or that this even came into his mind. Because the medieval times, even before Christ times, it was like this. And capitalism, socialism, and communism was nowhere in the picture. It was either you work to eat, work to feed your family, or it was either you dictate. You dictate kingdoms, you dictate towns, stuff like that. Capitalism, socialism, and communism was nowhere in the picture at that time. It came in when they formed a much more higher government. But let's keep on going.
How is apathy forcing someone to be beholden to your will? You're literally describing an individual that has no will in the situation to begin with.
I was about to describe it. Okay, so
I will let you go. I'm sorry. I'll shut up. I get mad at fucking commies, dog. But I'll be quiet. I'll behave.
Okay, so let's say I own everything. I've suddenly become a capitalist. Oh, you've converted me, man. But we live.
If you own everything in the planet, that would be more dictatorship than capitalism, though. Because if you own everything, then that was an act of enforcement. You probably back some people into a corner to sign this over, sign that over, by way of force. And if they didn't do it, then you would have to take drastic measures. That's more an act of dictatorship than it is capitalism. But let's go ahead and hear this guy out.
Live in a monopoly in which I owe everything.
So you own the world?
Mm-hmm.
How the hell did you do that?
Effectively.
By dictatorship.
I don't fucking know.
I'm just not gonna. I don't engage in hypotheticals.
Now see. He just says he doesn't know how he owns it. He just came up with a hypothesis that he came and answered.
I'm a good entrepreneur.
No, it just doesn't match reality, right? Like an individual that owns all of the property in the entire world is essentially an impossibility. So I don't feel the need to engage in an analogy that doesn't match reality.
The setup to test the non-aggression principle, sir.
Exactly, so, which means it needs to maintain the principal elements of the world in which we live in order for it to be accurate.
I'm going to explain why apathy can sometimes be aggression. Okay, so let's say I can pretty much automate, pretty much everything I want to. But I'm obviously willing to hire some people. Now, them being jobless means they just starve, okay? But my ownership of that property makes them beholden to me because they rely on me for subsistence, do they not? I mean,
this guy has no idea what
analogy
he's
that I
talking
refuse
about.
to negotiate with, in which you own the entirety of the world. I told you it doesn't match reality. In reality, right? Like in reality, you have an evenly rotating economy. Even at best case scenario, you have an evenly rotating economy. In a worst case scenario, right, where the prices in competition are perfect and price is only inflationary, right? Like there's no profit that exists in an evenly rotating economy. So that's your utopia, right?
Monopoly example.
Right.
Let's just scrap the monopoly.
Yeah. All right.
Example.
Yeah.
Well, let's apply it to modern day. I mean, there's nothing more realer than modern day because this is the world.
Level up my overlay using Adobe
So,
Illustrator.
Obviously, people are beholden to capitalists, to businesses, to provide them subsistence and to keep them living, alive. So you have to give, on average, because this is for most workers, a third of your life you have to spend working, retire, and just to maintain yourself day by day.
But that's not an act of corrosion. That's an act of you putting money in your pocket and you put food on the table. It's not an act of corrosion. Like, an act of corrosion would literally be putting people in concentration camps and not paying them at all, and only feeding them scraps, probably only food and water and some soup. That's an act of corrosion. If you want to go into modern day times, where especially living in the United States, where anybody could be a businessman, like immigrants come here, become business people. They live the American dream of owning their own business, building generational wealth. That's not an act of corrosion. That's an act of building generational wealth. So, again, this guy have no idea what he's talking about.
I generally view that as a form of aggression, whereas my system proposes, okay, well, we've just done away with.
Your example was to prove that it's a form of aggression. Then you said that capitalists exist, people need to eat, therefore people work to eat, right? And because of that, that's a form of aggression. But you haven't explained how it's a form of aggression. You've just
stealing my life is what I'm saying.
What have I stolen?
My time?
How have I stolen it?
The autonomy?
In what way have I stolen it? As the capitalist, right?
Entirely beholden to you.
No,
subsistence for living.
No, it's not.
No, you're not.
No, it's not.
No, you're not. Name a place right now where you're beholden to a single capitalist.
I'm beholden to markets.
That's not.
So now you're beholden to the existence of humanity existing in a market economy. Okay.
That's not an act of corrosion.
That's what you're saying.
The market economy. Yes, that's what socialists want to do.
Right. Okay. So again, automatically I would just say positive rights don't exist. This is a silly argument, because that would require you to enslave other people.
Rights do. I'm a man-made law theorist generally.
Well, I believe in natural law and law that we can justify objectively, unlike laws that we kind of just like come up with out of our ass, out of a consequentialist analysis. Yeah, objectively. You cannot argue against the non-aggression principle without running into the law of non-contradiction. So it's false to argue against private property, and it's false to argue against
but
self-ownership.
Labor is aggression. Labor under a market system is aggression.
Right, but you keep making the claim without. So what are you defining as aggression? Because aggression, in as far as the non-aggression.
Let me replace that word with theft. Theft of my bodily autonomy, my time.
Okay, so now we're changing it to theft. Okay, now, but that doesn't change anything. You're just attempting to use a synonym, right? So, but you're still talking about the non-aggression principle, but you want to use theft. Okay, so what is theft? What does it mean to steal something?
This guy has no idea what he's talking about. He has no idea what he's talking about.
Involuntary removal of something somebody would rather have.
Okay, so involuntary removal of something someone would rather have.
That's
okay,
not.
so now what you've done is in your definition, you've abolished the right of private property, right? Because now what you've said is that every time there is conflict over scarce resources, anytime someone loses that conflict, regardless of how it's lost, right? That is a form of theft.
So this guy is this guy is obviously for socialistic and communist ideologies because those type of ideologies are for theft, especially theft of the small guys, the middle and low class. They are for taking from the poor and keeping to the rich. That's what I'm getting out of this guy. But this guy keeps on saying like, that's not in that corrosion. So this guy is obviously an advocate for state socialism or state communism. That's what he's all for. But he doesn't see it that way, because if the state is not in charge, then nothing is actually free. That's why I'm getting at this guy. I could be wrong here, but let me know what y'all think about it comes to the law. Let me just go and keep on going with this.
So two people want to drink this energy drink, right? And I say, no, this is mine. I was here first. Well, now what this is involuntary removal of something that someone else would rather have. You're now saying that I'm stealing something by drinking my own thing. Oh, so now theft only involves time? It doesn't involve property? It doesn't involve resources?
No, what I was saying is labor is theft of bodily autonomy and time. My system does away with subsistence. And
so
of course,
you don't,
yes, it's utopian,
you don't believe that you own your labor?
Man,
Okay, so once again, this guy is all for state welfare and the state taking care of you. Which, if you actually look at history, that basically went with socialistic ideologies, and people were not exactly free. They was more on the line of depending on the government, depending on the big guys to make the rules and tell you what you can eat, tell you what you cannot buy. That's basically what this guy is advocating for.
We need to perform labor. Obviously,
so do you own your body? You own labor. You own the right the right to do with your labor as you will. To do with your body as you will.
I don't have the right to not work. Obviously, like, I own my labor, but I don't have the right to not work.
Yeah, you don't have the right to not work. But once again, in a society where if you don't work, you don't eat, that doesn't bode well with people who want to put food on the table. That's not how it works. You can't just go about your day and not work and not expect somebody to just come in and say you or give you free money. That's not how it works in the real world. That's not how it works in the real world. And the fact that this guy is obviously pushing these dangerous ideologies, it baffles me that he truly believes this. He truly believes what he's saying. He does not really believe in people freely applying for a job and making and putting food on the table. He's all for the state coming in and just giving free money, which we all know if the money is coming from the state, it's not free money. It's coming from somewhere else. Probably, me, you, taxpayer. People who get taxed out the behind every month. You probably getting 30% or 40% of your check taken away and given to the federal government. That's what I'm hearing right now. But we're going to keep on going with this.
Well, those two are contradictory. You can't argue both of those at the same time.
Absolutely.
It's a contradiction. How can you own your right to labor and then say that you don't have the right to not be enslaved in labor to someone else, and then say that voluntary transactions that I have, that I advocate for, are actually the form of slavery? You just justified slavery, and then in your attempt to not justify voluntary interactions, you're a slaver.
Oh my God, dude. No. Okay. So slavery is involuntary ownership of another human being. Labor is the involuntary theft of a human being's time and bodily autonomy.
So hold on. If labor is in and of itself, right? That, right? And we're gonna use this is why I hate Marxists, because they fucking change words all the time. So what would be the other work? Would you supplant the other work with the term work and say that labor and work are two different things? And that the distinction of labor is the theft, supposedly, or the aggression, supposedly, of positive rights, and that work isn't labor? And then explain to me why that distinction is important.
Colloquially, labor refers to...
Now, here's the... I made this comment earlier in the video when the stream first started. I made this claim that I said I called it, and this guy just proved me wrong. Working, like... In today's time, working for a business is an act of slavery, which is not, because nobody forced you to sign that job application. Nobody forced you to apply for the job. Nobody forced you to to try to go out there and look for any type of income you can get. Nobody forced people to do that. It's an act of your own free will to do that. You don't have to work. Like a lot of people out here, especially people who are in their 30s or 40s, still living with their parents. They chose not to live. Not to live. I'm sorry, not to live. Not to work. And they end up freeloading off of the people who's taking care of them to this day. And those parents probably like, yo, where do we go wrong here? Why isn't our child looking for a job and trying to be independent or dependent on itself? That's not an act of aggression. That's not an act of corrosion. That's not an act of slavery. That's an act of free will of you wanting to be on your own 2 feet. That's not an act of corrosion.
Hard, arduous work. But for the sake of this conversation, I just keep them synonymous.
Okay, so if labor and work are the same thing, right? And an individual has a right to their own body and can freely do with their body what it is they do. They can engage in the abstract concept of labor voluntarily, and they can choose to do this for a sum of money and or benefits or barter. So how is that an act of aggression?
Starve otherwise.
Right, but we're going all the way back to your idea of coercion, right?
I'm forced to work.
Again, if you don't work, you don't eat.
So
been in Ancapistan because
you're forced to. You already said you're forced to work in your system as well, because you said you don't believe that you don't have the right to not work.
No.
You did say that.
It's an end goal. Subsistence is abolished, and we've met all needs. All that shit is automated. So in my system, we can just pursue our own interests.
That's a post-scarcity world.
That's not possible at all. It's not possible.
Yes, I want to get to a post-scarcity world. In Ancapistan,
if you're in a post-scarcity world, the entire conversation changes, because we don't live in a post-scarcity world. Post-scarcity world is a utopic fantasy.
So is Ancapistan, and that's what I'm trying to prove. So
your argument to me saying something is a utopic fantasy is, let me prove why I'm right by engaging in the utopic fantasy. I don't think mine is a utopic fantasy. I never claim any utopic dreams in anything. All I do is claim philosophical answers about what is and isn't aggression and what we should do in terms of common law and natural law philosophy. That's not a utopic vision.
Okay, me needing to work for a living makes me pretty much entirely beholden to you for a really good chunk of my life.
No, it does not.
A succinct explanation?
No, it doesn't.
No, because it's not true. Because you don't need to work for me. You have a labor market. You can work for a bunch of other people. You could become an entrepreneur. You could get a
not you.
You could get a loan. No, but you could literally go like capital, right? Capital and commodities. Like one man's capital is another man's commodity, right? Like they switch place.
Again, let me go and read out this again. Anarcho-capitalism is a political philosophy and economic theory that advocates the elimination of the state in favor of a system of private property enforced by private agencies, free markets, and the right libertarian interpretation of self-ownership, which extends the concept to include control of private property as part of the self. So, with his definition, he's literally saying like all these big companies that I gotta apply for, they're obviously coercing me in order to work for them. Again, which is not true because nobody is forcing them to sign that job application. That's an act of free will. It's your choice to either work for a food industry, a model industry, a industry that's probably about the news, about pictures, cameras, photography and all that stuff. He obviously, the guy on the left, he obviously does not see it that way. He sees that any act of labor or any act of work is an act of coercion, which is not. That's literally not how it works in these times. And even back then, like I said, during the medieval times, it was not like that. It was people can look for any job that they please, and if they ain't work or if they ain't do their own farming, they didn't eat. That's how it's always been. But this guy on the left, he obviously doesn't believe that.
Basis, right? So, but no, what I'm saying is, like, when you say you need to do this, you could literally have an idea right now. Sit down with a fucking pen and notepad, your personal property, if you will, right? Since we don't like private property, you could go to the fucking bank and say, I have this great fucking idea, right? And then they go, well, you don't have good enough credit. You raise your credit score, you can do some things. You can become an entrepreneur, you can become the capitalist, and you can hire other people. The idea that you are beholden to the capitalist class, right, is absurd, even in our own coercive system.
Well, let's say I have too big of an ego to work for anybody else. Even if I'm becoming my own boss, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm still forced to work.
That's not an act of force. That's you and your own free will pushing out a business so you can build generational wealth. That's not an act of coercion. That's not an act of force. That's a choice of you deciding to open up your own business. You probably probably saved up some money. I don't know how you got it if you ain't working. You probably found some type of money, build your own business, hire workers, and then you try to expand your business. That's not an act of coercion. That's an act of building generational wealth. Again, what is this guy talking about?
To generate interest on that loan, am I not?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by forced to work. If you don't pay things that you voluntarily said you would pay, then you have to do it. I mean, like we have like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like you need food. How do you get food? Well, working is one way to get food. It's not the only way to get food, right? But it is one way to get food.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's aggression because your system and Capistan makes me beholden to either a banker if I'm an entrepreneur or a boss if I'm working for somebody else.
Okay, so what is your definition of aggression now, as opposed to the libertarian definition of aggression? Because the definition of theft we already proved that you gave. You said, well, let's change it to theft, and then I already proved that your definition of theft is meaningless. But so like let's try again and let's get a definition of theft or aggression, right? So I can understand what it is that you're saying, because what you're saying is unequivocally false unless you have a different definition of aggression.
Okay, guys. So I'm gonna just go in that stream here. If you guys want to watch the full debate, if you have a Twitch, go to Fabian Liberty. Right there is at the top left, and then you can watch the full debate there, and you can give your take. But I'm gonna go ahead and end it right here. When it comes to the debate, because this guy on the left tree, or a hacker, he was literally painting himself into a corner, and he did not know what he was talking about. Okay, so right here, this guy obviously was using a definition of coercion that nobody else has used. Coercion is the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. When you're looking for a job in order to pay bills, that's not the coercion. But this guy, he was also an advocate for state socialism. The people don't have to work. The government can just give away free money, which in a society like I pointed out earlier in the video, from the Middle East to Russia to China to places like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. Those were more, China and Russia are more communist. But when it comes to places like Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, those are more socialistic ideology where, people can't. A lot of people cannot grow more than where they are at. People at the top don't want to see a lot of people get bigger. They rather make up new crazy policies to keep them at their own place. They don't want them sitting right next to them. They want them to go with their ideologies. They want to force the ideologies on them, and if they don't do it, they probably get stoned, killed, hanged, acts of aggression like that, or acts of violence like that. But this guy obviously did not see it that way. And this guy, again, he did not actually know what coercion means. It was to force somebody. Joining the labor force is not an act of aggression. It's a choice. But the guy obviously did not actually know what coercion means. Like, he did not actually look up the definition of coercion. But yeah, like I said, the whole debate is like an hour and a half, and we went through like, I think 50 minutes of it. Yeah, it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So like I said, if you guys want to check out the full debate yourself, I recommend checking out, if you have a Twitch or if you have a YouTube, check out Fabian Liberty. Go in and show some support over there. He, like I said, he does libertarian debates. He does debates for anarcho-capitalism. He debates Marxists. He debates LGBT people that say he's this, he's that. But once again, man, that guy obviously didn't know what the hell we talk about. And with that being said, if you guys like the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the video, hit the notification bell. I will see you on the next one. Peace. Also, make sure you join me on my Discord. The links are in the description below. You guys want to have a conversation, want to talk. You guys want to promote your own videos. You want to talk about gaming, movies, and TV shows, or politics. Just hit that link in the description box below, and let's have a chat. Also, make sure you follow me on my Twitch. I'll be on my Twitch sometimes, just playing games, to be chilling. Some new games coming out this year that I want to play, especially when it comes to Resident Evil games. And just make sure you subscribe there, you follow me there, and let's have some fun. Also, make sure that you do like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, because the YouTube algorithm is hurting everybody at this point, and they do not like seeing small guys like myself grow. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, because your man try to get paid here, people. It don't take nothing but a second.